What is up, everyone? Chris Gio here, coming to you from Beyond the Veil. Cherie and I were talking this morning, and we were just talking about kind of events that were taking place, and we were trying to remember when things happened. Yesterday, we did a great show about Eliza Lamb, and Cherie said, the date keeps changing from 2013 to 2011. I remember it in 2011. Is what she said. And I said, no, I think it happened in 2013. And the reason that it happened in 2013 is because I remember what was going on in 2011. And what was going on in 2011 was the invasion of Libya. And I've made references to this on the show before, how I found a lot of things, a lot of inconsistencies and photos that were taken and they were miscategorized by Reuters. And this was way back in 2011 when I first realized how the mainstream media operates, how they take something, spin it completely and totally out of context, and then put a completely different caption on it to make it look like there's something going on that's really not going on. I was on the Wayback Machine, and I happened to find the articles that we posted way back in 2011 where we were talking about this very thing. And I've referenced this photo in particular right here many times on the show before, but I thought this would be a great time to go back and just kind of look at what was posted back then, go over, just kind of reminisce a little bit, show you a little bit how the mainstream media has been contriving situations going all the way back to 2011, how we picked up on it way back then, how some of the alternative media reacted to it as well. I also was able to find, too, something that I thought was lost a long time ago. I found some ayahuasca experiences that I had written down in 2013 and 2014. Now, I haven't gone back to read these yet. I wanted to keep them fresh so I can read them to you here on air. I hope that I'm not bombarding people with too much content, but we've just been on fire lately. But in the first part of this, I want to get into the Libya situation. In the Patreon section, patreon.com/btvtribe, I want to get into the ayahuasca experiences from 2013, 2014, maybe talk a little bit about how the gnosis has evolved since then. I'm super excited to do this. And of course, I want to take a moment real quick before we begin to let you know that we've extended the buy one get one free coupon for a couple more days for AyaLife. AYALife.com is the website, and we've gone over some wonderful reviews in the past, but that buy one get one free coupon for the single bottles is about to expire. So if you want to take advantage of that, go to AyaLife.com, AYALife.com. In the chat yesterday, there were a lot of people that were talking about they just received their AyaLife, some people in Australia as well. And I completely missed those comments, so thank you very much for those. But some of the feedback that we've gotten on this is remarkable. I mean, bringing people back to life. That's the only way that I can describe it. I mean, as I said before, one of my favorite reviews that we've gotten is that Grandma was in hospice. He started giving her AyaLife, and she was ready to go. And he comes back a couple days later after giving her a little bit of AyaLife, and she was up playing cards with the hospice nurse, and he got a little bit of time left with her. Somebody was talking about yesterday in the chat that I totally missed about how it was helping with her back pain. It was helping with the muscle spasms. Cherie has been using it for muscle spasms and things like that. And in my opinion, this is the reason why we have stood tall throughout this entire situation with the zombie virus. We came across an article from the National Institute of Health that said that people are dying of the zombie virus because of cytokine storms or cytokine storms. And a cytokine storm is when the body has an infection, and they're treating it with antivirals, as a matter of fact, but their body has an infection, and so it overcompensates and starts to attack itself. We found another article that says that CBD prevents cytokine storms, and I swear by this stuff. I live by this stuff. I walk out there with no face diaper. I walk out there completely and totally confident because I know that I'm taking this on a regular basis. So I urge you to go to ayalife.com, AYALife.com, put 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 bottles in your cart, and use the coupon code BTVTRIBE, TRIBE, And let me take off one of these here just to show you how the coupon code works. BTV Tribe, all lowercase. We probably need to put an all uppercase one there too, but it's only going to last for a couple more days. So I urge you, if you want to get this at this price, we can't keep this going very much longer just simply because of the way the economy is. Everything is going up, but you see, it's a 500 milligram strength infused with the ayahuasca vine as well. The ayahuasca vine gives it like a nice little booster, and people have been reporting tremendous results from it. And it's 500 milligrams of pure CBD. We extract the CBD out, then we put it into USDA grade organic coconut oil, a few other things as well. Everything is USDA grade organic, and we even pay attention even down to the dropper itself. We have meter droppers, which no other company out there has. And like I've said before, I have a good friend that has a hemp farm, and he was going to give me some of that crude CBD oil that you find all over the place. And I asked him, how do you make sure that each bottle is consistent? And he said, well, the way we grow, our plants are pretty consistent, but you can't really guarantee consistency in each bottle. We guarantee consistency in each bottle because of the way that we do our formula. And he even admitted, he said, most companies don't do it like you do. You're doing it the right way. Most companies are just taking the crude stuff and that's it. But it's 500 milligrams per bottle. And with the buy one, get one free, you are getting an entire gram, 1,000 milligrams of CBD in the 2 bottles for $59 with free shipping on top of that. As you can tell, we can't sustain this very much longer, but if you want to take advantage of that, take advantage of that sooner than later. Take advantage of it sooner than later. ayalife.com is ayalife.com right here on the screen. So let's get into this. Lucky actually just wrote me and she said, I'm going to use some of these articles for a blast from the past section on my show. And I was thinking, I've already got one set up, ready to go, but we're not going to talk about any of the articles that Lucky has done, only the articles that we've written. But we used to have a website called Truth Frequency News, and there were a lot of articles there that I happened to find an archive for. But again, the website for Aya Life is ayalife.com. Let's get into it.
So far away tonight, but I can't lose this one. Get a pride of the falling night. Thought that I was fit to fight for us to be. You gave me life for loving me. Tell me, where did we go so wrong?
Raw consciousness does not require a savior, but rather, raw consciousness requires only knowledge of oneself and the power to access it. Remember this, as we unlock an even greater gnosis from beyond the veil.
From the fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada, good morning, good evening, wherever you may be across the nation, around the world. I'm Chris Geo by myself today. I'll be taking you beyond the veil. Mrs. Geo is downstairs doing little twin things and taking care of the house. And I am taking care of our BTV tribe, but we were reminiscing a little bit. And first of all, I want to say thank you to Debbie. She said Aya Life is the best tasting CBD oil that I have ever tried. Thank you very much for that comment. And that was one thing that we really focused on when it came to Aya Life is the taste. I couldn't stand taking all that other CBD crap that's out there that tastes like freaking grass. Ugh. I wanted to make sure that it tasted good, and it comes to a point where you kind of crave it too. It's got a little bit of sweet in there, all natural, 100% USDA or certified organic, but yeah, it's got a little bit of sweet there. But anyways, I don't want to make this show about Aya Life. I do want to talk about Libya. Yes, ma'am. How can I help you? Your litter box is full? Yeah? Come here and say hello to everybody. The little SecMed kitty wants to say hello to everybody. She heard that I'm doing a show, so she's like, I'm going to come upstairs and say hello to everybody. Hi, SecMed kitty. All right, baby, I can't play with you right now, and I'll change your litter box right after I'm done, I promise. As you can tell, we practice the ancient Egyptian culture here and traditions, which are that the cats run the house. But anyways, Back in 2011, we got started in 2009, but 2011, we had the invasion of Libya. And my mother actually grew up in Libya. She was of Italian and Greek blood. However, my grandfather traveled all over the place. And so she was actually born in Egypt, which is very strange because I don't really have any Egyptian blood, but I have a lot of Egyptian ties. But she grew up in Libya part of the time because my grandfather was working in the oil field. And when the whole thing about Gaddafi came out in 2011, everybody was saying, hey, we got to go get this guy. This guy's a weirdo. He's a creep. Look, he's got female bodyguards. I mean, even AJ himself was going along with the mainstream media talking points and pushing this invasion of Libya. Most of you now understand who Gaddafi was, and you understand that he was giving his people pretty much everything. Free healthcare, that was just as good as ours. $50,000 if you wanted to get married. If you wanted to start a farm, you got some land and some equipment. If you wanted a business loan, it was interest-free. Your obligation was to help another business succeed. You got a deposit from the nation's oil reserves every single month in your bank account. He did socialism the right way. The only time in history that I can think of socialism done the right way. However, he didn't have an army. So when he decided that he was going to take all of his gold and turn it into a gold dinar for Africa, that's when we, the West, said, no, we can't do this. There's been a lot of conflicts over the petrodollar. And as soon as somebody tries to move away from the petrodollar, we've got to go over there and take their resources because we can't pay in gold. We can only pay in fiat currency, the petrodollar. So Saddam Hussein did the exact same thing too. He wanted to switch from the dollar over to the euro, and we saw what happened there. So when you trace all this back, it all goes to resources. But going back even further, we came across an article. Well, we were looking up something completely different, and we came across not an article, but it was a CFR memo from like 1940, 1950 that had to do with something completely different, and that had to do with psychedelics as well. But we happened to see in there how they were talking about Africa, and they were talking about how Africa should not unite because if it ever does, it has so many resources that it can take over the rest of the world. So they have to systematically destabilize Africa, and they have systematically destabilized Africa. Muammar Gaddafi, who let me go ahead and pull him up on the screen here, just so I can get a picture here. He came in and here's a good picture of him with the bodyguards. He came in and he started doing things completely and totally different and wanted to unite. And I started watching a lot of his speeches, and he went to the UN and he was telling the other Arab countries, hey, they're coming for me. They're going to be coming for you next. And all the UN leaders were all the Arab leaders were just sitting there and just laughing about all that. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. He used to do speeches about how all their resources are being taken by PepsiCo, by Coca-Cola, people like that. And why isn't Africa making Coca-Cola? Why isn't Africa making Pepsi? Why isn't Africa doing all that? They take their resources, make their products, and then sell them right back to them. He even went into JFK, and he said, JFK was assassinated. This is according to Gaddafi's speech. He was assassinated because he was looking into Israel's nuclear program. And at that point, they couldn't do that. So they assassinated JFK. And he also talked about Obama. And he talked about how Obama was a Muslim brother and they have a Muslim brother in the presidency, and that he had hoped that his Muslim brother was going to come through and unite the Arab countries and do what's best for Islam and for all the Arab countries. Now, just a caveat, I am not pro-Islam at all whatsoever. I'm just looking at the events as they transpired. But my mother growing up in Libya never told me any stories about some kind of dictatorial rule that she was under. In fact, she told me the opposite. And so that was the first thing that stuck out when we went into Libya. Now it's kind of common knowledge, but I have made references to how Reuters has taken photos and completely recaptioned them, and one in particular that had a date on it, 1996. And for the record, before this gets wiped, I wanted to go ahead and make a video and talk about this article that we wrote back in 2011 about Libya And like I said, I'm going to get into some ayahuasca experiences on the Patreon section, patreon.com/BTV Tribe. But let's go over to this article right here. And this is written on a website that we used to run called truthfrequencynews.com. And Lucky was the primary author. Oh, there's even an ad for George Cavazos right there, too. That's how we met him. He advertised on our website, and we've been friends ever since. So, Lucky was managing Truth Frequency News and did a wonderful, wonderful job. It was such a beautiful website. Let me see if I can open up the homepage here on the Wayback Machine, because it was a very beautiful website, and I wish we hadn't let it go in hindsight. The problem was putting out all these articles and doing all this was just so daunting. There was so much. We'd even put our Truth Frequency radio shows there. We had the Lost City of Enki and the Left Brain Prison with Michael Tellinger. The stuff that we talk about now: left brain, masculine energy; right brain, feminine energy; left brain being the logical processor; right brain being the creativity and all that. I mean, all this stuff, really, we've been echoing over and over and over again. But the thing is, I call it spirals rather than loops, because when you spiral around, you come back around with a new understanding, revisit the information again, and then you something just caught my eye. But you revisit the information again, and then you have a whole new understanding. And one of the other things Gaddafi did here, there's an article right here. He was actually talking about Obama, and he was talking about where Obama was born. Now, I'm not going to say any key words or anything like that, but the fact that he was up there giving these kind of speeches was very interesting. So this is an original article here that I wrote. And it said, Gaddafi, truther, birther, anti-Semite. Now, it's important to understand what a Semite is, because a Semite is anybody from an Arab-speaking country or from the Middle East. So we always think of anti-Semitism as just focused on Israel, but in actual fact, anti-Semitism is anti-Middle East altogether. Arabs are anti-Semitic as well. So they've taken the language and they've completely twisted it and turned it around. But it's amazing how deep this rabbit hole goes. We've always remembered. Let me make this a little bit bigger here. We have to always remember this in mind. It's a control information war. So we never take things at face value and dig deep within ourselves to follow our own intuition. Wow, those were words I wrote in 2011. However, looking at events leading up to the illegal invasion of Libya, we're noticing many parallels between the CIA definition of truther, birther, and anti-Semite and Colonel Gaddafi. Of course, it's absurd to say Gaddafi is an anti-Semite, because the definition of a Semite is someone from the Arab-Israeli region. But the CIA, ADL, etc. would have us believe that the term denotes a person who is anti-Jewish. But we all know that what we really mean is that we're really against the Zionist takeover of the world, or anyone who points out the wrongdoings of that region. The following videos are very interesting indeed. In an interview with Larry King, Colonel Gaddafi states that bin Laden had nothing to do with 9/11, points out that the hijackers were not from Afghanistan and trained in the United States. All true. Larry King quickly goes to break and veers off the topic. He also proposes Israel and Palestine merge into one state in order to have a peace in the region. This is what Gaddafi was proposing, a merger of Palestine and Israel, something that Trump was also trying to do as well. He made historic peace deals, and here comes Biden and completely turns those around. So, unfortunately, the videos are no longer here. The videos are no longer there, but in an interview broadcast throughout the African Union, which he speaks openly about in many different instances, despite the U.S. hush-hush on the topic, and the European Union, Colonel Gaddafi states that Al-Qaeda doesn't actually exist and is made up by the Western powers. And in actual fact, that's really what happened, is that we went in there with Zbigniew Brzezinski, back in the 1970s, we wanted to provoke Russia into a war that they couldn't sustain, and we created Al Qaeda, which means the database. And bin Laden was one of our freedom fighters out there, and he was a hero. And then all of a sudden, it turned into the adversaries of 9/11. And then, of course, we know the Bush and bin Laden connections. They've been in business for a long, long, long time, all that. But Gaddafi was out here calling it all out in 2011, right before the invasion. In the following video, Colonel Gaddafi discusses his Kenyan-born and Islamic-educated brother, Obama, points the finger at Israel for the JFK assassination, speaks openly about peace between Israel and Palestine, and once again mentions the hush-hush African Union. He also likens the United States leaders to Hitler, Napoleon, and other empire-building dictators. And when you look in hindsight, that's exactly what's happening right now. The empire is falling. Afghanistan, we've bailed out of there. It's only a matter of time before Iraq as well, and we watch our empire fall. Empires always fall throughout history. The most telling of all is the multi-part speech before the United Nations in September of 2009, where he condemns the UN for not acting against the many illegal wars, including Iraq, Afghanistan, calls out the United States as being the real terrorists, points out the hypocrisy of the United Nations, veto policy, and basically calls them a mob whose goals are to take over the world. I suggest watching the speech in its entirety because it's jam-packed with information. And again, that video is no longer available, unfortunately. I don't even know if I can find a link for it. No. And that's a shame. But you can see even the YouTube looked way different back then too. Suddenly, a different picture emerges of Colonel Gaddafi, and quite frankly, I've never seen a leader speak so openly about the way things really are. Is he a tyrant? Is he the tyrant that the mainstream media is making him out to be? I have no idea. I'm not discounting the possibility at all. But if we take a look at the definition of a domestic terrorist and how it applies to Americans like you and I in the same context, take the term rogue state, terrorist, and tyrant and apply it to Colonel Gaddafi. What do we get? So what have we learned? If you speak out against the globalist agenda and you run a country rich in oil and resources, expect to be invaded. 2011. And that was just a side note. I want to get into this here. Libya False Flag Part 1. Reuters Hoax Exposed. In this article, which was originally named Libya Reuters Blanks the World Exposed, for immediate release. As we've been watching the conflict in Libya play out exactly like the war in Iraq, and being keen to their tricks and tactics, we've been examining pictures, videos, and other evidence that leads us to the conclusion that the entire ordeal is a cause and action CIA-backed coup. We believe there is actually very little conflict, if any, aside from the false cloth perpetrated by these people right here. I won't say those keywords. In a UN takeover over the region. Considering, I'm reading stuff from 2011, so I feel like I'm in 2011 again, like I can speak openly, but I got to remember I'm in 2021, not 2011. Considering the internet blackout, disabling the people's ability to speak, Russia Today's interview with the people of Libya, and the great oracle John McCain's prophecy that Gaddafi will bomb his own oil reserves. They were saying that he was going to bomb his own oil reserves back then. I'm going to open up this article here by ABC. Surprise, surprise, Libyan oil facilitates hits just like McCain predicted. So McCain predicted that Gaddafi was going to bomb his own oil fields during all of this, which you and I know what's really going on there. I don't think it needs to be explained. But anyways, the first huge red flag was a picture by Reuters photojournalist Asma Wagih with the caption, Protesters look at pictures of protesters who were killed during the last few days during the uprising against Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi. in Benghazi City, Libya, February 23rd, 2011. And this was the photo right here. I'm surprised because the way this all started is I was actually looking for this photo, and this photo has been scrubbed. Luckily, we held on to it. I'm going to try to open it in a better window here so we can see it. I may have to... Okay, so this is a photo right here of... You can see right here at the bottom of the screen. I'll actually zoom in a little bit here. 20, and this came out of Reuters.com. A protester looks at the pictures of protesters who were killed during the last few days during the uprising against Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi in Benghazi City, February 2013, 2011. Reuters, Asma Wagul. So, do you see anything wrong with this photo here? Anything wrong with this photo? What if we zoom in a little bit here and see this? Now, obviously, none of us read Arabic. Maybe some of you do. If you do, I would love to know in the comments, and I would love to know in the chat room what you guys are reading here. But I can tell you one thing that I can read, and I can read numbers. And when I see this, I understand the way they do numbers and dates in other parts of the world is they will put the year first, the month, then the date. That's the most efficient way to do it, as a matter of fact. That's the way we've done our archives as well, because they all line up perfectly when you do it year, month, date. 1996, June 29th of 1996. Now, if the protesters if this is a picture of protesters looking at pictures of protesters who were killed during the last few days in February 23rd of 2011, why does it say June 29th, 1996? And how did they get all this printed up so quickly in the middle of an uprising on top of that? I mean, there was chaos, there was bedlam, there was an uprising against Muammar Gaddafi. Do they have a Kinko's on the corner? I mean, as Kamala Harris has recently said, they don't have a Kinko's out in rural America. And so they can't go get voter ID because they just don't have a Kinko's out there to make a photocopy. But in Libya, a backwards third world country, they have a Kinko's on the corner that can print these huge, beautiful banners in the middle of an uprising. And especially with the date, June 29th, 1996. And this took place in February 23rd, 2011. Something wasn't quite right with that. The photo is posted on several blogs across the internet with the caption and credits to Reuters. At first glance, the photo looks convincing. But looking at it further, for just another second, a huge mistake sticks out. The date, June 29th, 1996. With the number 1200, which is printed right next to it. If this is a picture of protesters looking at photos of protesters who were killed, then what does that mean? On June 29th, 1996, there was a massacre at Abu Saleem Prison, and the families have been demanding justice. The picture is from a memorial commending the victims, and not as the caption claims. And there was a legitimate prison massacre. I don't know what the backstory was, but every single year they come out and they do a memorial for the prison massacre that took place June 29th, 1996. So they've taken this photo, recaptioned it, and said that it was an uprising against Libya. Now this is fact. This is 100% fact. The protest allegedly took place in February of 2011. A clearer picture of this wall is found on Wikipedia. We understand Wikipedia is not a 100% reliable source of information, but the picture allows us to see the banner much more clearly. So let's open that. I haven't opened this in years, so I don't know what this wiki page is going to show. Sure enough, there's the exact same picture. Abu Saleem Prison is a top security prison in Tripoli, Libya, which is often described as notorious by human rights activists and other observers. Amnesty International has called for an independent inquiry into the deaths that occurred there in 1996, an accident which Amnesty International and other news media refer to as the Abu Saleem Prison Massacre. Human Rights Watch believes that 1,270 prisoners were killed and calls it a site of egregious human rights violation. Western governments largely ignored this, and no international inquiry was launched due to quote-unquote oil interests. After the 17th of February uprising in April 2011, inmates of the prison escaped and engaged Gaddafi forces in armed combat at Bab al-Alib, etc. So, on July 24, 2010, Libya blocked access to YouTube after it featured videos of the demonstrations of the Libya city of Benghazi by families of detainees who were killed in Abu Saleem prison in 1996, and videos of family members and Libya leader Muammar Gaddafi at parties. The blocking was criticized by Human Rights Watch. It also staged large demonstrations in the city of Al-Baida on April 5th, 2009. So this didn't even happen around that time. This was memorializing the people who were in this prison massacre. So that was the first thing. I said, something's not right here. Something's not right. But I think it demonstrates how they take something completely out of context and they spin it. And they tell you this is happening when nothing's really happening. Muammar Gaddafi was also on, I think, with Larry King. And he said, there's nothing going on in Libya. This is crazy. This is crazy. And the last thing that he did as a leader is he gave people AK-47s. And that's the problem with his socialism, is that when it was time to fight, he didn't have an army because he gave everything to his people. And we, the quote-unquote good guys, decided we can't have this. We can't have him creating the dinar. We can't have him talking about all the stuff that he's been talking about. We can't do any of that. This was the beginning of the censorship, which has found itself all the way here. And I don't know how accurate that story about blocking YouTube is or not, but I know one thing for sure. The mainstream media was propagating all this stuff when nothing was actually going on. We searched for this photo and found countless blogs from The Examiner to small unknown blogs displaying the photo and caption. We brought this to the attention of our good friend Jack Blood, who was our good friend at the time, for his professional opinion on how to proceed, as we thought he stated that only way to be newsworthy is if we found the original Reuters link. So we followed the breadcrumbs. At first search, the original photo seemed hopeless. The only references we were able to find were small, obscure blogs circulating the photo. As we dug deeper, we found deleted articles from Yahoo News in the cache section with the exact same caption. The problem was the picture was not the same, but the date and caption matched perfectly. And this was the picture that we found right here. You can see a smaller version of the exact same mural, and this was from the cached Yahoo News. A protester looks at the picture of protesters who were killed during the last few days during the uprising against Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi. Tags civil unrest as opposed to civil arrest like we had in the great nation of Chaz. The search continued and we finally found the Reuters link containing this caption. We're going to click on the Reuters link. I don't know where it's going to take us these days, but we found the link. This is taking a little while to load because it's all loading from the Wayback Machine. There it is, right there. live.reuters.com. The original link to the picture. A protester looks at pictures of the protesters who were killed during the last few days during the uprising against Gaddafi. We did our research, and we brought the facts to the table. We brought the facts. We even found the original source. right on Reuters, live.reuters.com. You can still find it on the Wayback Machine right now. Please note, to avoid any confusion, let me say the two photos, top and bottom, do not focus on the same parts of the wall. You can see in the top photo that the wall is comprised of multiple banners in a tile-like manner. There are 60 visible photos and 1,200 slaughtered prisoners, which leads one to believe that the wall is comprised of dozens or so banners spanning 50, 100, maybe 200 feet. At the source of the photos, are not Coolpix. Coolpix happened to be the only source that carried the full-size image that we can analyze. The search continued for the full-size image, and we finally were able to locate it and compare it with the images we found on Reuters. Comparing the two photos, we noticed that the text below the prominent photo was blurry and unreadable. Luckily, the full-size photo was very clear, and you can view the full-size photo by clicking on the photo or clicking the link here. Damn, we were fucking concise. We were concise. The questions that we posed here, again, for any skeptics, there's dates right here. You can see June 14th, 1995. September 19th, 1995. Are these birth dates? Are you telling me this guy here is 16 years old? Let me focus out a little bit. Oh no, it doesn't capture the rest of the photos, but this guy over here is 23 years old. This guy over here is 22 years old. No, those dates are something else. Those dates are the date of they were either killed or the date of their conviction or something. I don't know what those dates are. Again, anybody who can speak Arabic, I would love to get to the bottom of this because this has been haunting me for 10 years now. But damn, we were good back then. And we still are equally as good. But I think this just goes to show. I'm not trying to pat my own back here, but we were fucking good back then. As you can see, what Reuters conveniently blurred out are the actual dates. So, where's the blurred out photo? I think this is it. Yeah, you can see, those are a little blurry right there. You can see this date here, but you can't see any of these dates here. They were blurred out. Photoshopped and blurred out. Those motherfuckers. Major update. After a bit of sleep and we refreshed these photos, we figured out that where the above photo is from. It's from the same memorial as the first pic. Notice the top right-hand corner, etc., etc., etc. Yeah, like I said, you know, it's the same memorial that... actually, I shouldn't have done that. I should have opened it in a new window. But you can see right here, 1996. We're looking at the exact same mural, just from a different perspective. So the reason that we went in so deep is because we took this to some alternative media people. I won't name their names, even though I already did. And they just said, well, there's no story here. There's nothing to see here, etc., etc., etc. And I was thinking, wait a minute, we have hard evidence of the mainstream media completely contriving an event. And you're telling me that there's no evidence and there's no story here? Are you insane? I was like, well, we're going to run with it then. All right. Nobody wanted to touch this at the time. Nobody wanted to touch this. It was only after a couple weeks when it became okay to touch it that the truth movement and mainstream media, even AJ himself, started to touch it. But this was before it was sanctioned, which was also a big red flag to me. Going all the way back to 2011, going, hey, there's something going on here because we're talking outside of the box. Everybody else is in the box. We're giving them solid evidence as to why this is a box. And instead of saying, wow, that sounds great, they're saying, don't worry about it. Just ignore it. Just ignore it. We're concluding that Reuters posted the original photo, but when it was pointed out as too much of an apparent fraud, they replaced the photo with the one that you see above and made sure the dates were properly blurred out. As many of you know, the U.S. media is not above staging situations, perhaps even entire wars. One example is the infamous CNN coverage of the Gulf War, which was filmed in front of a blue screen. I can play this one here for you. I might have to Google it. Yeah, I'm going to have to Google it or YouTube it, but I know it's still there. CNN faking Gulf War. And if it's not on here, I have it on my computer. So there it is right here. So let's check this out. This is the Gulf War footage. And I remember actually watching this live when I was a kid. This was in like the 90s. And it was the first war, as George Carlin said, that was broadcast on every channel plus cable. And I remember watching this war going, something's not right here. This looks fake. There's something wrong here.
Now, again, as we said, we're not sure what caused this. It could possibly, and we emphasize possibly, have been a ground impact of a Scud. It could have been a ground impact of the Patriot, or it could have been the result of debris falling between the two of them. We just don't know right now, but we do know that at least 2 Scud missiles incoming were fired at Riyadh, and according to the Saudi military, they were both shot down. Charles Jaco, CNN, reporting live from Saudi Arabia.
Does that look like Saudi Arabia?
Was almost exactly 2 hours ago when the sirens went off here in Saudi Arabia. Where we are in eastern Saudi Arabia, there was no problem. However, there was an intercept elsewhere near the capital city, Riyadh. We've got some videotape of that. You
Yeah,
can
they've
take a
got some
look at right
videotape
now.
of that.
Hi, Atlanta. We're about to have a short course in missile identification. This is a Scud. You can tell it by its distinctive label. Now, when the missile is launched, the first thing you look for is the plume sticking out behind it. Now, when you detect this, you can tell it's been launched. Thank
See
you.
the graffiti on it? Yeah, show me graffiti.
Larry King show or bust. Look at this.
Look
Look at this. Look at this shit. Look at
Believe that.
Okay, the best part is when
the
the
top
bombs
10
come.
things about Saudi Arabia. Maybe we could shorten the
Let me, this is 9 minutes. I'm not going to play you all 9 minutes, but hold on. Oh, here we go. Here we go.
couple of explosions, what may have been an outgoing Patriot ground-to-air missile, some reported airbursts that may have been an intercept of an incoming Scud missile. We're really not sure. All we know is that the air raid sirens have gone off, and we've heard the outgoing roar of at least
Air raid sirens going off.
Patriot missile. We've heard some sort of airburst. We can't tell where it was from where we are right now. We're waiting to see what's happening. As you can hear, the air raid sirens are still going off around us. People are, strangely enough, used to it. This is the first one of these attacks that's taken place early in the morning, but they're...
Better duck for cover.
Anything other than what we've got now.
Duck and cover. Duck and cover.
Is that a missile going out? We're not quite sure. We can't show you anything else than what we're seeing right now. Because of military regulations, we are not allowed to show you where the missiles might be going, what direction they will be flying
military
in,
regulations.
where the airbursts might be taking place. There's obviously something going on. We heard another dull roar that shook things a little bit, and we're waiting to see what else is going on. Right now, that's about all we know, that something is happening. We're hearing pops and things shaking, but people are staying relatively calm.
Possible threat would be over because it is now morning there.
They actually
What,
broadcasted
just after
this.
6 o'clock in the morning?
The whole thing is everyone assumed that the threat would be over because it was early morning, but the thing about Saddam Hussein is that he has never done the expected, and right now we have, once again been surprised with the unexpected, an air raid, an apparent attack, although we can't say what the outgoing missiles hit, at approximately 20 after 7 in the morning Saudi Arabian time. All the other attacks have occurred from 10 o'clock at night till 4 in the morning. This is the
Under heavy attack. Hold on. There's this best part. Oh, here it is right here. This is the best part. They come under attack. They've got their specialist that comes on.
Earl, I know we can't be very specific given these restrictions, but within those parameters, what did you see?
Well, what I saw, I didn't see anything hit. I looked almost straight above us. There was a vapor trail coming from my right to my left, and there's a cloud of something. It looks like it might have been an explosion, a cloud. I'd say...
Since you're attacking us, can you...
What did you see?
I felt dizzy. I felt something.
You take it.
Okay.
All right. My apologies for that. He's putting on a gas mask. There hasn't been any gas dropped here, and you can tell.
You smell anything?
Better mask up.
A missile exhaust going off. The missiles use a rocket, a cordite, some sort of burning And we just heard a little thump just then. But
I have to apologize for that. I caught a whiff of something.
jumped out of bed hearing the air raid.
Orderly.
So yeah, so that happened, and that's a thing. So just tying it into something relevant here. Let's just go here and just kind of put this in context here. What is this man talking about here? We just watched CNN. Let's watch what this man is talking
Since you're
about.
attacking us, can you give us a question?
Go ahead.
No, Mr. President-elect.
Go ahead.
Mr. President-elect,
Go ahead.
since you are attacking
No,
our news
not you.
organization,
Not
can
you.
you give us a chance?
Your organization
you
is
are attacking
terrible.
our news organization.
Your organization's
Can you give us
terrible.
a chance
Let's
to
go.
ask a question, sir?
Go ahead.
Sir,
Quiet. Quiet.
Mr. President-elect.
Go ahead.
Can you
She's
state
asking a
categorically-
question. Don't
Mr.
be rude.
President-elect, can you give us a question?
Don't be
You're
rude.
attacking us. Can you give us a question?
Don't be rude.
Can you
No, I'm
give
not
us a
going to give you a
question?
question. I'm not going to give you
Cautions to deal with that shook things a little bit.
I got to play these both simultaneously here. Let me make this a little bit smaller. Let me see how I can fit this on the screen together. But this has to go together. All right. I think you can see that here.
a
Can
question.
you state categorically?
You are fake news.
Sir,
Go ahead.
can you state categorically that nobody... No, Mr. President-elect, that's not
Go ahead.
appropriate.
Let's do it one more. Oh, it's 33 seconds too. Let's do it one more time, just for shits and giggles.
Give us a question.
Go
Since
ahead.
you're- No, Mr. President-elect.
Go ahead.
Mr. President-elect,
Go ahead.
since you are attacking
No,
our news
not you.
organization,
Not
can
you.
you give us a chance?
Your organization
You
is
are attacking
terrible.
our news organization.
Your
Can you
organization's
give us a
terrible.
chance
Let's
to
go.
ask a question, sir?
Go ahead.
Sir, can
Quiet.
you state...
Quiet.
Mr. President-elect.
Go ahead.
Can you
She's-
state
she's asking a
categorically-
question. Don't
Mr.
be rude.
President-elect, can you give us a question?
Don't be
You're
rude.
attacking us. Can you give us a question?
Don't be rude.
Can you
No, I'm
give
not
us a
going to give you a
question?
question. I'm
Can you-
not going to give you a
can you sta-
question.
can you state
You are
categorically-
fake news.
Sir,
Go ahead.
can you state categorically that nobody... No, Mr. President-elect, that's not
Go ahead.
appropriate.
I think it's appropriate, but that's my opinion, So, anyways. Oh man. So yeah, getting back to this here. Libya is currently under complete internet blackout and people are unable to speak out about the conditions there. However, one thing is clear, Gaddafi was preparing to take away the oil rights from the big oil companies and give the profits to his people. Free health care for the people from the oil revenues. Colonel Gaddafi, well, Mr. Gaddafi, we can't have that. Now can we? How dare you give your people the wealth of their own nation's resources? Ask Hugo Chavez. We won't put up with that, mister. Or maybe simply it's just a matter of George Carlin's foreign policy at work. Regardless, Truth Frequency News will be there to point out all the inconsistencies, videos, and battles with no enemies, and MI6 agents leading the protest. Stay tuned for part 2 because we've only just begun. Wow. Bra fucking vo. I don't mean to give myself a round of applause, but I got to give a big shout out to Lucky as well, because she ran Truth Frequency News. I think her name is Truth Frequency News in the chat, as a matter of fact. So, yeah, when you see Truth Frequency News, think Lucky. So, I've got part 2 here somewhere, or I had it. I opened up so many windows that here it is. Libya conflict part 2. Who benefits? As the days progress since our latest article exposing Reuters as getting it wrong. How about that? Getting it as oops, we made a mistake. But they never retracted the mistake. We see the NW order agenda moving forward, full steam ahead under the smokescreen that is the Japan nuclear crisis. And that was during the time of fuck you, Shima. Not to say that we should not focus on Japan, but we should. However, the disaster has provided the perfect smokescreen, no pun intended, for the U.S.-UN invasion of Libya. Before we begin, I'd like to address some of the commentary by the naysayers, whether they be paid bloggers or bots. We didn't think about bots, because back then my bot's been wiped. Or simply ill-researched individuals, because we were getting a lot of flack for this, a lot of flack. And it's like, you can't argue with any of the stuff we presented. We were very concise in our presentation. So far, the only thing we've been able to see is straw man arguments and arguments coming from ill-researched perspectives, people too lazy to click on the links in the article, or people too lazy to explore our website or even other resources for more information. Let me make it clear once and for all that we're not here to be your shepherd. Wow, even back then we've always been who we are. You can see the heart right there. We're not here to be your shepherd, and we expect our readers to be more than sheep. That's what the fuck I'm talking about right there. On a brighter note, it's refreshing to see so many independent news sources now parroting what we said weeks ago, because they were. They took our info, they ran with it after it was okay and sanctioned by the truth movement. No link back to the source material, no nothing like that at all, period. Update number 1, we located the original Reuters link for both pictures we used in part 1. Initially, part 1 stated that the Reuters, that only one picture was wrong, but both pictures were wrong, etc. Initially, our focus has been the photos, videos, and news stories presented by the U.S. and British media, including remarkably professional-looking protest signs, battles without enemies, and other anomalies. However, we'd like to explore the cause and action connection and who benefits. Before we get into that, let me point... Oh, damn, we were fucking good back then. I'm sorry, but damn. More media manipulation. First, let's take a look at how these protest signs up close by either zooming in or opening up the photo in editing software. Here's a perfect example. Do you see how the sign is grainy and all the letters with huge white spots missing in the top right of the banner? This might be an indication that it was manipulated. Let's see. Here we go. So here's a protest photo, right? Of supposedly, the protest there. But you can see right here, if you zoom in, I don't know how well you can see it on the screen, but you can see it here. You can see it looks like somebody took a white thing and just painted it out and then wrote whatever they wanted there on top of it. Looks very, 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 very contrived. We'll just leave it at that. This might also be an indication that the signs were contrived. Or take this one, for instance. You can see the signs were professionally printed. So this one right here. So keep in mind, we're in the middle of an uprising. There is chaos going on. There's an internet blackout as well. Bombs are being dropped. Big pieces of fiery wood are falling from the sky. Yet somehow they were able to just quickly make up these beautifully printed photos in a place where Kinko's doesn't exist. Like Kamala Harris has said. They don't exist in the rural areas, but they exist in Libya in 2011 during all this stuff. And they were able to just get all these signs so perfectly printed up. What's interesting is this is the first time I've actually taken a look to see what was in the background. And in the background, it looks like they're... I don't know what that is. I mean, you see Africa there. Maybe some of you can fill in what's going on here. But you see Africa here. You see people in green. You see people very proud. You see Gaddafi here with his hand up. It does not match this. This looks completely different than what's going on here in the background. So what's going on? You guys and gals, let me know in the chat. So let's get back to this. The facts are that the protests were peaceful. How things come full circle, don't they? How they come full circle. The protests were peaceful. And there was a small portion of violence in small sects of the cities perpetrated by, this is what happened. This is what happened. I didn't know this show was going to go on this long. This article came out. Oh, it's not available anymore. 50,000 mercenaries were sent into Africa by these people here. The people who say they are real. We'll just leave it at that. 50,000 African mercenaries. And I remember reading this story. Why are 50,000 African mercenaries being sent in? To create the chaos. We'll get more into that as this article progresses. At this point, however, however, it seems like a moot point to anyone who understands the Gulf of Tonkin, what happened in Iran with Mossadegh. And what happened is the CIA went in there and they had a democratically elected leader, Mossadegh, and they were bombarding literally like bombing pamphlets down that were all, saying death to Mossadegh and all this, et cetera, et cetera. They took him out and they installed the Shah of Iran. And he was one of our guys, just like Saddam Hussein was installed as one of our guys as well. I think this is all, I don't think it's conspiracy theory. I think it's fact. We know that this happened. It's like open. 9/11, the Iraq War, and pretty much every other war has been manipulated, and both sides have been funded by the same players. Therefore, we'd like to present a timeline of events in the international banking, oil, and weapons corporations who stand to benefit from a UN takeover and bring to light some of the lesser-known facts about the key players. Reports from inside Libya include telling statements such as, the protests always start out peaceful, but then they push it until it becomes violent, and other similar statements. We also have footage of the media riling up protesters off air before they begin filming. Ooh, this will be interesting if I could actually pull this up. Let's see. I remember this one here. This was a view from the top. Somebody was filming the media, and they had a few people there, and the media was telling them, you know what? Maybe this still exists on YouTube. Maybe it does. Let's see. It does. It does.
In Libya, there's conflicting reports on the number of killed, airstrikes by Gaddafi forces, the number of cities controlled by the opposition, pretty much everything that's being reported. Last week, a wave of correspondence suggested the opposition was in control of almost the whole country and Gaddafi was doomed. Artizak Sanaboyko went to the opposition-held Benghazi to find out why these turned out to be exaggerations.
The allure of a war. Incomprehensible as it sounds, it's present in any conflict. Just days ago, these parents feared for their children's lives. Today, they are taking their pictures in front of the tanks. The desire to be captured laughing in the face of danger is even stronger among journalists. And the conflict in Libya is providing a perfect setting for it. On TV screens, Benghazi may look like the center of the rebel resistance.
The country is waking to another day of chaos.
Gaddafi may have lost about half of his country.
They watched these bombs fall from the skies.
But in reality, it's more like a seaside resort than a conflict zone. Hotels are fully booked with journalists, and residents go about their daily lives. Here, boys are looking for new things to play with. Toy guns are in ample supply. Yet some reports sent from Benghazi refer to the situation in eastern Libya as war. Not a conflict zone where rebels are engaged in sporadic and isolated pitched battles with pro-Gaddafi forces, but an all-out war.
Muammar Gaddafi is striking back.
Forces loyal to Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi appear to be advancing east.
Libya's leader Muammar Gaddafi has fled the country.
With rebels professing their readiness to fight Gaddafi's regime to the bitter end, no wonder news reports are carrying predictions of imminent civil war. Yet, as the rebels' inability to mount a fully fledged offensive becomes more apparent, so is the...
See, look, what they're doing, they're poking a picture with a gun.
Unbalanced nature of the coverage.
Rather than being impartial observers, some networks stop short of directing the protesters. But here, the Al Jazeera crew is warming up the crowd in time for their next live report.
Jinan Musa was one of the first reporters to arrive in Benghazi. For several days, she's been traveling with the rebels about 200 kilometers west of the city. At some point, the pro-government forces opened fire at her crew, a focal point of her report.
There's a war going on, and whether we like it or not, there's a front line, and there are people with guns, and there are two sides fighting.
News channels know that gunfire and explosions make for strong TV, but they also can't help to blow things out of proportion. And with journalists unable to report freely from Tripoli and other Gaddafi-controlled parts of Libya, some can find themselves sucked in by the rebel sides of the story.
The rebels are just opening up to journalists.
So, anyways, interesting. It's interesting to go back and look at this, but this is what I was talking about here. They're literally riling people up before their coverage.
Warming up the crowd in time for their next live report.
Wagging the dog, man. Wagging the dog. Ugh. So, I don't know. It's 2021. I don't know if this stuff is going to get us flagged or not. I mean, you know, it's the truth. But, you know, the truth is forbidden now. Speak no truth. Hear no truth. See no truth. Where are we at? I got to go back. I got so many tabs open now. It's not even funny. Okay. Reports from inside Libya include telling statements, etc., etc. I believe most telling of all is the report of the people who think they're real. Funded and dispersed 50,000 American mercenaries to Libya. Where's that taking us to? Oh, that's actually taking us to another. Let me see here. Let me see if we do this. What if we edit this URL here? Because I think this was a misprint in the URL. So if we do this, we might be able to find the post. No. Okay, never mind. I often say on our radio show that it's important to know history, and in order to understand it, where we are and where we're going. You can say that again. Although it would be impossible to outline Libya's entire history, I'd like to bring a few key points to the table. Before I begin, let me preface it by saying that my grandparents' mother and her two sisters lived in Benghazi for approximately 15 years during the beginning of Gaddafi's rule. Many Greek, British, Italian, French, Cypriot, and surrounding countrymen moved to Libya to work in the booming oil trade. While surely things have changed since then, they described Benghazi as thriving first world country void of police state that we know Britain and the United States to be. Even back in 2011, we had no idea back then how bad it can get. There were never troops on the corners, cameras at every intersection, or police randomly stopping, searching, and extorting money out of people, which is the world we live in now. It was business as you would expect. If you take a look at some Russia Today footage filmed inside of a hospital in Benghazi, you will see their healthcare facilities parallel with the ones in the West. They're not a third world country with people living in caves. You think people living in a cave? You think people living in a cave can carry out blank 11? Libya sits on the 9th largest oil reserve in the world, exporting an average of 1.6 million barrels of oil per day, similar to Iraq, who produced 1.3 million per day. It's also important to note that in one of the only remaining oil reserves not under UN control since Saddam Hussein was overthrown by the U.S., the key benefactors of these petrodollars are the usual suspects: J.P. Morgan, Chase Manhattan, Citigroup, Carlyle Group, etc. Wow, we were just fucking nailing them back then. Libya has been dubbed a rogue state, not only going along with going along with U.S. demands, and has had a hostile relations with those who think they are real, and other U.S. allies since the 1980s. On April 15, 1986, Gaddafi's newborn daughter was killed by a strike ordered by then-President Ronald Reagan. Libya was pushed into the globalist agenda through sanctions and false cloth actions, including the 1998 false cloth bombing of Pan Am Flight 103, which was blamed on Gaddafi, but later revealed to be a U.S. operation. Because of the pressure of the international interests, including Exxon, Halliburton, who Dick Cheney was on the board of directors of, Chevron, Conoco, Marathon Oil, Raytheon, Dow, and others, U.S. Libya-based association, was formed in 2005 after Gaddafi agreed to go along with the quote-unquote war on terror in exchange for lifting the sanctions placed on Libya. Initially, Gaddafi was opposed to the war in Iraq and held the position that the war on terror was an excuse for the West to invade Arab territories. It's also interesting to note that most of the documents from the Reagan-Bush Jr. regime have remained classified. In January of 2009, the mainstream media was in a frenzy because Gaddafi announced that he would nationalize his oil reserves, set up free health care for the Libyan people for diabetes and major illnesses. Apparently, the UN was forcing Libya to give their oil away for $43 per barrel, while the American people were being charged upwards of $4 per gallon for gasoline. Oh, how we go through cycles. Those who don't remember history are doomed to repeat it. It's also worth mentioning that Libya is not only one of the biggest oil reserves in the world, but also one of the biggest freshwater reserves in a country which gets 360 days of pure sunshine. Think solar power. Another interesting note, Libya is roughly the size of England, yet the population is 5 to 7 million. And because the population is 5 to 7 million, Gaddafi was able to do what has failed everywhere else, which is socialism, which is why we can't stand for that here in the United States. There's way too many people, and it's going to lead to feudalism. But that's the plan. That's what they want to bring in. Despite popular belief, the Libya uprising began in early January, not February, with peaceful protests against the government for their lack of action in building government housing. Soon protests followed for the 1996 Abu Saleem prison massacre, where 1,200 inmates were allegedly slaughtered by government forces. However, protests for this event happened pretty much every few months in Libya. Reuters used photos of these protests to paint the picture that thousands were later slaughtered by Gaddafi during the protests in February, events which never happened. Also, the mainstream media has represented photos from protests around the world, England, Washington, etc., and depicted them as happening in Libya. So they were taking pictures of photos that were happening in other places. A great example can be found here, where Washington, D.C. is clearly shown in the background, yet at first glance it appears to be a Libyan protest. I hope this opens up. I would love to see this again. No. However, we do have a direct link here, so let's see. Damn it. It's not there. That would have been a great photo. No. I should have screenshotted that. Oh well. As stated by an eyewitness on Russia Today, the protests start out peacefully until they push us to violence. The protest really turned for worse when the Israelis sent the 50,000 mercenaries, etc. In February, other rogue leaders, including Hugo Chavez, who also tried to nationalize his oil reserve, and Fidel Castro, began speaking out against the U.S. planning to invade Libya. But quite frankly, you don't have to be a rogue state to see the UN coup in progress. Russia, Turkey, and many others have spoken out. Under the media smokescreen, which has been the nuclear disaster in Japan, Obama goes on national TV and announces that we are now at war with Libya. Suddenly, the U.S. Backtracked on its original position. The public had to be made to believe that this was a UN decision. I wonder what happens when you click here. How Obama's CIA will invade Libya while making it look like a UN decision. Coming right out of the AP. Preparing for the prospect of deeper international intervention, President Barack Obama and British Minister David Cameron conferred Tuesday on the spectrum of military and humanitarian response to Libya's worsening civil strife. The British leader bluntly said after the talk that the world cannot stand aside and let Muammar Gaddafi brutalize his people. Gee, as if we've never heard that one before. It's interesting to note Ben Fulford's interview with a Japanese foreign minister several years ago, which was probably a bunch of BS, but at the time we didn't know any better. When asked by Fulford why Japan went along with such an anti-Japan pro-U.S. policy, the foreign minister replied, the U.S. threatened us with an earthquake machine. I would go back and say that this was total horseshit. Considering the source and considering that is the only source, I would now in 2021 and probably in 2012, 2013, say that this is complete bullshit. If you listened to the show last night, especially the Patreon version, you know why. Many have criticized Fulford for being able to secure interviews with some of the top-ranking global elite. The HARP data, which has finally been recognized by alternative media sources, should not be ignored. It's also interesting to consider the fact that Japan threatened to dump the dollar just a few weeks prior to the earthquake, and we're talking about Fukushima, and that was fact. Japan threatened to dump the U.S. dollar just a few weeks before the earthquake. It's possible HAARP was used to create that, not only as punishment for Japan dumping the dollar, but also as a smokescreen for other actions. However, as mentioned before, in this YouTube video shows a random YouTuber predicting the earthquake based on Comet Elenin. Or perhaps the truth lays right in the middle, with Elenin causing the earthquake and HAARP magnifying the event. Regardless, the left hand is providing the perfect distraction for the right to run unaccounted for. And this goes on. But I think I've made my point. And I'm just... It's remarkable to go back and read some of this. Oh, many more anomalies. Long before anyone knew his name, a Kenyan-born senator pushed to bail out a banking cartel that caused the U.S. economic crash in the first place. Little was known about this senator. His name was Barry Soetoro, a.k.a. Barack Obama. Later, he was greatly rewarded with with a presidency, or what I like to refer to as a corporate veiled in democracy, and hijacked the plantation house, sidestepping the Constitution that states that any U.S. president must be naturally born. Yeah, I think we're getting into some stuff that may violate the terms and conditions of 2021 here. March of 2021, the U.S. mainstream media reported that Gaddafi began arming his population in anticipation of an invasion. This does not coincide with previous reports that his entire country was looking to overthrow him. Why would a dictator arm the very people who they are trying to overthrow in the first place? So let's see where this takes us. That takes us somewhere. If we go click on this link here, probably going to take us to a dead link. Yep, of course. This page cannot be found. Cannot be found. Let's do Wayback Machine. And let's just put that page in the Wayback Machine. But you know what? My bot's been wiped. Maybe we can see it here. Let's see. Screenshot, snapshot. Of course. I got a 301 response crawl time error, of course, from CBSnews.com. You know why? Because you got a CBS in order to believe it. Let's try this one here. Maybe it's going to come up. Cross your fingers, ladies and gentlemen. We might have it. Here it is. Gaddafi arms his civilian supporters. The embattled Libyan regime passed out guns to civilian supporters, setting up checkpoints Saturday and sent armed patrols roving the terrorized capital to try to maintain control of Muammar Gaddafi's stronghold and quash dissidents as rebels consolidate control everywhere in the North African nation. Now, keep in mind, there were 50,000 mercenaries sent into Libya first, before this happened. They were outsiders. They weren't Libyans. So, what did he do? He armed his people. Said, you got to fight for your right to survive. So, I'm glad I was able to get it on the record. And I think this was just phenomenal. But what I also found was a couple of ayahuasca experiences that I had in 2013 and 2014 that I want to share with our Patreons. Patreon.com/BTV Tribe. Of course, if you're listening live, you're going to get the full show. But head on over to Patreon.com/BTV Tribe, and we'll get into some deeper gnosis. We've been kind of reserving the gnosis for our BTV Tribe because we are in 2021. And realistically, I don't know how long we can keep the entirety of this broadcast up here on YouTube. So the entirety of this broadcast may very well go to Patreon.com/BTV Tribe. But in the meantime, let's play this. And we will be right back.
Mr. President, you've been the big guy for 6 months now in the White House. Can you take us behind the scenes, something that was extraordinary or unusual that happened that stands out to you?
Here's the deal. I want to say, oh, if I like to walk out on my road to go in. Come on. If I like to walk out on my road to go in. You think I'm joking? I'm not. You know what I mean? If I like to walk out on my road to go in. What do you think, huh? If I like to walk out on my road to go in. If your kid wanted to find out whether or not there's a man on the moon or whatever, something, whether those aliens are here or not. And you can walk out and say, I just don't like the way that guy wears his top. It's like telling your kid, I tell you what, you're 4 years old when you see a red light cross the street. I grew up in a neighborhood where you became a cop, a firefighter, or a priest. I wasn't qualified for any one of them. So here I am. And by the way, one of the things I've gotten able to get done, and that's what, let me finish the question. The answer. I want to say, oh, if I like to walk out of my robe to go in. Come on. If I like to walk out of my robe to go in. You think I'm joking? I'm not. You know what I mean? If I like to walk out of my robe to go in. What do you think, huh? If I like to walk out of my robe to go in. I mean, QAnon. The idea that the Democrats or the Biden is hiding people and sucking the blood of children. And I don't care if you think I'm Satan reincarnated. The fact is, you may not like me, and that's your right. Well, I'm sitting across from Putin.
One you love right now, you never know the last time is going to be. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you even further beyond the veil. Love ya.